Have you ever loved someone so much that you forgot where you ended and they began? Now imagine that man isn't just a wealthy CEO, but a 600-year-old predator pretending to be human. This is the story of Jessica. She was just a waitress at a diner on 4th Avenue. He was Dominic Vane, the king of the city's underground. She gave him everything, her time, her breath, her sanity. She thought she was protecting him. He thought she was a cage. She would never forget the night she heard him tell his ex-lover that she was suffocating him. He wanted space. Jessica gave him the whole damn universe. And this is exactly how he came to regret it. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime stick harder. Her name was Jessica Clarker, and for the last 8 months, her life had revolved around 2 things: the smell of burnt coffee at the Rusty Spoon, the diner where she worked double shifts, and Dominic Vane. If you Googled Dominic, you'd find a bio about a reclusive tech investor, a man who owned half the skyline but was rarely seen in daylight. If you knew the truth that kept Jessica awake until 4:00 a.m., you knew that the tech mogul persona was just a modern mask for something ancient. He was the king. Not a metaphorical king, but the literal apex predator of the Pacific Northwest vampire coven. Their relationship was a fairy tale written in invisible ink. Nobody could know. "Table 4 needs a refill, Jessica," her manager, Rick, shouted over the clatter of silverware. "On it," she yelled back, wiping her hands on her apron. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was the 3rd time she'd checked it in 10 minutes. She knew she shouldn't. She knew Dominic was in a council meeting, which meant sitting in a dark, velvet-draped room in his penthouse, discussing territory disputes with creatures that looked human, but smelled like cold iron and blood. She pulled the phone out anyway. Sent 7:30 p.m. "I made that rare steak you like. I can bring it over after my shift. I know you haven't fed properly in days." Sent 8:15 p.m. "Just checking in. Heard sirens near the tower. You okay?" Sent 9 p.m. "I miss you." No reply. "He's not going to text you back, honey," said Brenda, the line cook, slapping a plate of fries onto the pass. Brenda was 50, divorced 3 times, and had eyes that saw through everything. Men like that need the chase. You're making it too easy. You're acting like a doormat. "He's not a normal man, Brenda," Jessica muttered, grabbing the ketchup bottle. "You have no idea. She wasn't clinging because she was insecure. Well, maybe a little. She was clinging because she was terrified. Dating Dominic wasn't like dating a guy from Tinder. Dating Dominic meant worrying that if he didn't answer, it wasn't because he was busy. It was because a hunter had put a wooden stake through his chest, or a rival clan from Vancouver had decided to breach the treaty. She loved him with a frantic, breathless intensity. She organized his schedule. She reminded him to interact with humans so he didn't lose his cover. She cleaned his penthouse when his cleaning crew, who were actually ghouls, missed spots. She was the bridge between his cold, eternal world and the warm, messy reality of humanity. She thought she was his anchor. At 10:30 p.m., her shift ended. She didn't go home to her studio apartment in Queen Anne. She took an Uber straight to the Vane Tower. The doorman, a large, silent man named Cale, whom she suspected was a thrall, nodded at her. "He is in the study, Miss Clark. He gave instructions not to be disturbed." "It's fine, Cale," she said, smiling, clutching the Tupperware container of high-grade steak she'd seared specifically to rare perfection. "I'm just dropping off food. He forgets to eat." Cale hesitated, his eyes shifting. "Miss Clark, really? He is with Lydia." Lydia. The name was a shard of ice in Jessica's stomach. Lydia was his advisor. She was stunning, icy, and had been a vampire since the French Revolution. She looked at Jessica like she was a fast food wrapper she couldn't wait to throw away. "I'll be quick," Jessica insisted, breezing past him. She had to see him. She just needed to see his face, to know he was safe, to feel that cold hand touch her cheek. She needed the validation that she mattered in his world of monsters. She took the private elevator to the penthouse. The doors slid open silently. The apartment was vast, all glass and polished concrete, overlooking the city lights. It was dark, lit only by the ambient glow of Seattle. She walked towards the study. The heavy oak doors were cracked open just an inch. She raised her hand to knock, a smile ready on her lips. She was going to tell him she loved him. She was going to ask if he wanted her to rub his shoulders, which were always tense from the burden of leadership. Then she heard his voice. It wasn't the soft, seductive baritone he used with her. It was the weary, irritated growl of a man at the end of his rope. "I can't breathe, Lydia." Jessica froze. Her hand hovered in the air. "She means well, Dominic," Lydia's voice purred. It was smooth, patronizing. "She's a sweet little thing. A pet." "She's not a pet," Dominic snapped. But there was no defense in it, only exhaustion. "But God, she is everywhere. My phone doesn't stop buzzing. I come home, and she's here. I go to work. She's texting me. She's trying to manage my life, my diet, my safety. She treats me like I'm an invalid, not a king." "She loves you," Lydia said, and Jessica could hear the smirk in her voice. "It's not love," Dominic said. The words hit Jessica like physical blows. It's suffocation. It's like wearing a wool coat in the middle of summer. I walk into a room and she's there, looking at me with those big, anxious eyes, waiting for me to validate her existence. I need air, Lydia. I need space. I need silence. "Then end it," Lydia suggested. There was a pause, a long, agonizing silence. "I can't," Dominic sighed. "It would break her. She's fragile. Humans are so fragile. I just need a break. A week, a month, just time where I don't have to report my every movement to a waitress." Jessica stood there, the Tupperware container warm in her hands, her heart turning to cold lead. Fragile. Suffocation. A wool coat in summer. She looked down at the steak. She had spent $20 on this cut. 2 hours of wages. She had seasoned it with the rosemary he liked. She had come here in the rain because she was worried he was hungry. She wasn't his anchor. She was his burden. She didn't knock. She didn't burst in screaming. For the first time in her life, the anxiety that usually screamed in her head went dead silent. A strange, numb calm washed over her. She set the Tupperware container on the floor outside the door. Quietly. So quietly. Then she turned around, walked back to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. Dominic Vane wanted silence. He wanted space. He wanted to not report to a waitress. Fine. Jessica was about to give him so much space, he'd think she'd fallen off the face of the earth. The hardest part about disappearing isn't the physical act. It's the mental one. It's training your thumb not to hover over his contact name. It's forcing your brain to stop wondering if he's awake. Jessica woke up the next morning with a chest that felt hollowed out, but her resolve was harder than diamond. The first thing she did was change her number. It seemed drastic, she knew. But Dominic Vane had resources. If she just ignored him, he'd track her phone. He'd send Cale. He'd think she was kidnapped. She needed him to know this was a choice. She went to the T-Mobile store on Pike Street as soon as it opened. "New number, please. Unlisted." Then she did something she hadn't done in 8 months. She called her landlord. "Mr. Henderson, it's Jessica. You know how you said you were selling the building, and I needed to be out by next month? I'm moving out today." She didn't have much. Just clothes, books, and the memories of a love that was apparently one-sided. She packed 2 suitcases. She called her cousin, Jenna, who lived in Tacoma, 40 minutes south. "Jen, can I crash on your couch for a bit? I broke up with him." "The rich guy?" Jenna asked. "The one you never shut up about?" "Yeah, that one." "Thank God," she said. He sounded creepy anyway. "Come over." By noon, Jessica was in Tacoma. By 1 p.m., she had blocked Dominic on all social media. By 2 p.m., she sent an email to the Rusty Spoon, requesting a transfer to their sister location in downtown Tacoma. It was a step down, a grittier diner near the docks. But she didn't care. She left one thing behind. She couriered a package to Vane Tower. Inside was the key to his penthouse he'd given her, the one he said was for emergencies, but she used to bring him laundry, and a note. The note didn't say, "I hate you." It didn't say, "I heard you." It was just a blank piece of paper with a single lipstick stain, a shade she never wore. It was a shade Lydia wore, a petty, subtle message. Go be with someone who doesn't suffocate you. Day 1 of silence. Her phone didn't ring, because he didn't have the number. But she felt the phantom vibrations. She imagined him waking up at sunset. She imagined him stretching, reaching for his phone, expecting the usual, "Good morning, handsome. Hope the sun didn't bother you" text. He would see nothing. He would probably smile. Finally he'd think, "She's busy. She's giving me that space I wanted." He would go about his night. He'd meet with the council. He'd drink his synthetic blood wine. He'd laugh with Lydia. Day 3 of silence. Jessica was working at the Tacoma diner. The customers here were rougher, longshoremen and truckers. She liked it. They didn't want conversation. They wanted coffee and silence. She fit right in. She was scrubbing the counter when the news flashed on the TV mounted in the corner. Tech mogul Dominic Vane announces new merger with European firm. They showed a clip of him leaving a building. He looked impeccable. Sharp suit, sunglasses at night, which the press called eccentric, but she knew was necessity. He didn't look worried. He didn't look like a man missing his girlfriend. He looked relieved. That image broke the last little hope she had. The pathetic hope that maybe he'd come running immediately. He was enjoying the silence. Day 7 of silence. It had been a week. By now, the relief phase should have been wearing off. Even for an immortal, a sudden vanishing act is weird. Jessica was walking back to Jenna's apartment when she felt it. A cold prickle on the back of her neck. The feeling of being watched. She stopped and turned around. The street was empty. Just rain-slicked pavement and flickering streetlights. If Dominic wanted to find her, he could. He was the king. He had spies everywhere. But he hadn't come. Which meant he either didn't care enough to look, or he was so arrogant he assumed she was just sulking and would come crawling back eventually. "She's fragile," he had said. Jessica gritted her teeth. She went into a 24-hour gym and signed up for a membership. She wasn't going to be fragile. She wasn't going to be the waitress who waited. If Dominic Vane wanted air, she was going to make sure the vacuum she left behind was so absolute it would suck the oxygen right out of his lungs. Dominic sat in his study, a glass of vintage blood wine in his hand. The room was quiet. Blissfully quiet. For the first time in months, his phone wasn't lighting up every 15 minutes. "Sir," Cale said, entering the room. "The package you received yesterday." "What about it?" Dominic asked, not looking up from his book. "It contained Miss Clark's key." Dominic paused. He lowered the book. A small frown creased his pale forehead. "Just the key?" And a blank note. No message. Dominic scoffed lightly. "She's throwing a tantrum, Cale. She probably sensed I was pulling away. She's trying to punish me by playing hard to get. She has not been to the diner in Seattle for 3 shifts, sir. Rick, the manager, says she quit." That made Dominic sit up. Jessica needed that job. She needed the money. She quit. "Transferred," Cale corrected. "But we don't know where." Dominic felt a flicker of something in his chest. Not fear. Just annoyance. "She's dramatic," Dominic muttered, tossing the book onto the desk. "She wants me to chase her. She wants me to hunt her down so she can feel important." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city he ruled. "Well, I'm not going to do it. She wants to hide. Let her hide. I give it 3 days before she calls me crying." He took a sip of the wine. It tasted sour. 3 days, Cale. She'll be back. She can't breathe without me." But as he looked at the reflection of the empty room in the glass, the silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt heavy. It took exactly 14 days for Dominic Vane's perfectly curated life to begin rotting at the edges. For centuries, Dominic had convinced himself that his power came from his bloodline, his wealth, and his ruthlessness. He hadn't realized how much of his modern power came from a calendar synced to an iPhone 13 and a woman who noticed details he ignored. The first crack in the facade was the council meeting with the Lycan ambassador, Marcus. It was Tuesday. Dominic was sitting in his study, enjoying the silence that had now stretched into a low-grade, buzzing tinnitus. Lydia was draped over the leather sofa, scrolling through Instagram, bored. "Aren't you supposed to be at the docks?" Lydia asked, not looking up. Dominic frowned. "The docks? Why?" "The treaty renewal, with the Wolves. It's the 3rd Tuesday of the month." Dominic's cold heart skipped a beat. He looked at his phone. There were no reminders. No, "Don't forget the silver coin for the offering" text. No, "Traffic is bad on I-5, leave early" notification. Jessica always handled the calendar. Jessica always prepped the ceremonial gifts. "Damn it," Dominic hissed, blurring into motion. He arrived 40 minutes late. In the world of supernatural politics, lateness is an insult. Lateness without the ceremonial gift is a declaration of war. He smoothed it over, but it cost him a concession regarding territory in Belltown. He returned to the penthouse furious, his suit soaked in rain. He walked in, expecting a warm towel and a sympathetic ear. He found an empty hallway. The air smelled stale. The flowers in the vase on the entry table, lilies, Jessica's favourite, were dead, their brown petals shedding onto the marble like dandruff. "Cale!" Dominic roared. The large bodyguard appeared. "Sir? Why is this place a sty? Why are the flowers dead? Why wasn't I reminded about the meeting?" Cale blinked, his expression flat. "Miss Clark managed the housekeeping staff schedule, sir. She also managed your personal calendar. I am security. I do not do flowers." Dominic gritted his teeth. "Well, hire someone. Fix it." He stormed into the kitchen. He was hungry. The stress of the meeting had burned through his reserves. He opened the fridge. It was stocked with rows of typo-negative blood bags, just as he liked. He grabbed one, tore it open with his fangs, and took a deep swallow. He immediately gagged, spitting the crimson fluid into the sink. It was sour, rank, spoiled. "What is this?" he shouted, throwing the bag into the basin. Lydia sauntered in, holding a glass of wine. "What's the drama now, Dom?" "The blood is bad. It's spoiled." Lydia shrugged. "The fridge temperature probably fluctuated, or the supplier sent a bad batch." "Jessica checked every batch," Dominic said, the name slipping out before he could stop it. "She checked the dates. She rotated the stock. She kept the fridge at 38 degrees, exactly." "Oh, God." Lydia rolled her eyes, leaning against the counter. "Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. You sound obsessed. If you miss the little maid so much, just call her back. Tell her you're sorry. Buy her a bracelet, and let's move on. Her silence is boring me." Dominic glared at her. But she was right. The silence wasn't liberating anymore. It was inconvenient. It was irritating. And honestly, it was lonely. He missed the smell of vanilla shampoo. He missed the way she'd hum while she polished his cufflinks. "Fine," Dominic said, pulling out his phone. "I'll end this charade." He felt a surge of smug satisfaction as he scrolled to her contact. She had probably been staring at her phone for 2 weeks, waiting for this moment. He would be benevolent. He would tell her she could come back, provided she dialed back the hovering. He pressed call. He held the phone to his ear, waiting for the ring. He expected a breathless, "Dominic?" Instead, a mechanical female voice answered. "We're sorry. The number you have reached is disconnected or is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again." Dominic froze. He pulled the phone away, stared at the screen, and dialed again. "We're sorry. The number you have reached, disconnected," he whispered. She changed her number. Lydia laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound. "Oh, the little mouse has claws. She blocked you, Dom." Dominic felt a cold rage settle in his stomach. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an erasure. Jessica hadn't just walked away. She had burned the bridge. "She thinks she can hide from me." Dominic's eyes shifted, human hazel bleeding into a predatory red. "In my city?" He turned to Cale. "Find her. I don't care what it takes. Track her bank accounts. Track her social security number. Find out where she is." "Sir," Cale hesitated, "we tried that last week when you asked for the dossier update." She's gone cash only. She closed her accounts at Chase. There's no digital footprint since the night she left." Dominic dropped his phone on the counter. The screen cracked. For the first time in 600 years, Dominic Vane felt a sensation he had long forgotten: panic. While Dominic was realizing his life was a house of cards, Jessica was busy building a fortress. Tacoma was different from Seattle. It was grittier, less pretentious. She worked the breakfast shift at the Anchor, a diner near the port. The customers were dock workers, fishermen, and people who didn't ask questions. She looked different, too. She had cut her long, wavy brown hair into a sharp, chin-length bob and dyed it a deep, chemically artificial black. She stopped wearing the floral dresses Dominic said made her look innocent. She wore combat boots, jeans, and oversized flannels. But the biggest change was physical. Every night after her shift, she went to Iron Gym. It was a boxing gym that smelled of stale sweat and liniment. She punched the heavy bag until her knuckles bled. Then she taped them up and punched it again. Right hook. For the nights she waited up. Now. Left jab. For the way he looked at Lydia. Uppercut. For she's suffocating me. You've got a lot of anger in there, Jessica, her trainer, a massive ex-Marine named Mike, said one night as she panted against the ropes. Not anger, Mike, she said, wiping sweat from her eyes. Preparation. Because she knew something Dominic didn't. She wasn't just suffocating him with texts about dinner. She was watching. When you date a vampire king, you see things. You see the shadows that move when they shouldn't. You see the customers who order coffee but never drink it, watching the door instead. She had spotted 3 hunters in the Rusty Spoon. In the last month she was with Dominic. She never told him directly. He would have just dismissed it as her being paranoid. Instead, she handled it. She spilled coffee on them so they'd leave. She called the cops on suspicious vehicles to clear his exit route. She made sure he never left through the front door when the wind smelled like garlic and sulfur. She protected him. And now that she was gone, he was wide open. But she wasn't safe either. If the hunters couldn't get to Dominic, they might try to find his human weakness to leverage him. That was her. Or it used to be her. Dominic was spiraling. It had been 3 weeks. The penthouse was dark. He hadn't fed properly in days, refusing the bagged blood, craving the fresh, rare steaks Jessica used to make, or better, the vein of a willing donor. But he didn't trust anyone else. He was sitting at his desk, staring at a map of Washington State, when the intercom buzzed. "Delivery for Mr. Vane," the concierge said. "Send it up," Dominic muttered. He was expecting a shipment of artifacts from Europe. 5 minutes later, the elevator opened. A man in a brown delivery uniform stepped out, holding a package. He wore a cap pulled low. Dominic stood up, rubbing his temples. "Just leave it on the table." The delivery man walked forward. He didn't look at the table. He looked at Dominic. And then Dominic smelled it. Not cardboard, not sweat. Vervain. The herb that burned vampires like acid. Dominic's eyes snapped up. The delivery man dropped the package. He pulled a compact, suppressed pistol from his waistband. "For the order," the man whispered. Bang! Bang! 2 shots. Dominic moved with supernatural speed, but he was sluggish from lack of proper feeding. One bullet missed, shattering a vase. The other caught him in the shoulder. It burned. Wood bullets soaked in holy water. Dominic roared, the sound shaking the glass walls. He lunged across the room, closing the distance in a blur. He grabbed the man by the throat and slammed him into the wall. "Who sent you?" Dominic snarled, his fangs extending. The man gagged, clawing at Dominic's hand. She isn't here to check the service elevator anymore." "Is she?" Dominic froze. He squeezed harder, snapping the man's neck before he could think. The body dropped to the floor. Dominic stood there, chest heaving, blood oozing from his shoulder. She isn't here to check the service elevator. The realization hit him harder than the bullet. Jessica used to meet every delivery. She used to chat with the concierge. She used to insist that all service staff use the main lobby, not the private elevator. He had called it controlling. He had told Lydia, "She doesn't let anyone near me." She wasn't controlling him. She was screening them. She was the filter, the shield, and he had thrown the shield away because he wanted space. "Sir!" Cale burst into the room, gun drawn, followed by Lydia. Lydia screamed when she saw the blood. "Oh my God! Dominic! You're hurt!" I'm fine, Dominic growled, ripping the wooden bullet out of his shoulder with a wet squelch. The wound began to knit together slowly. How did he get in? Lydia shrieked. Security is supposed to be tight. He came up the service elevator, Dominic said, his voice hollow. The one Jessica insisted we lock down after 6 p.m. The one I ordered unlocked 2 weeks ago, because I didn't want to walk all the way around to the lobby. He looked at Lydia. She looked horrified, but mostly for herself. She was checking her shoes to make sure no blood had splattered on them. Dominic felt a wave of revulsion. He looked at the dead hunter. This man knew Jessica was gone. The word was out. The king was vulnerable. Cale, Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. Get the car. Where are we going, sir? To the safe house? No, Dominic said. He walked to the window, looking south toward the dark horizon. We are going to find Jessica. Not to drag her back. But because if I don't find her, they will. And if she doesn't want to come? Lydia asked snidely. Dominic turned. His face was a mask of cold, terrifying, regal authority. Then I will beg. I will crawl if I have to. Because I am not just suffocating without her, Lydia. I am dying. The bell above the door jingled. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The diner was empty except for old man Jenkins eating pie in the corner. Jessica was wiping down the counter, humming a song she couldn't get out of her head. She felt the shift in air pressure before she heard the footsteps. The air grew colder. The hair on her arms stood up. She didn't turn around. She gripped the spray bottle tighter. We're closed, she said. Jessica. The voice was like velvet wrapped around a razor blade. It was the voice that used to whisper, I love you, and the voice that had said, she's a burden. She took a deep breath. She turned around slowly. Dominic stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. His skin was grey. His eyes were rimmed with red. His suit was wrinkled. He looked like a fallen angel who had face-planted into a mud puddle. Behind him stood Cale, but no Lydia. You look like hell, Dominic, Jessica said, her voice steady. He took a step forward, his eyes drinking her in. He looked at her black hair, her combat boots, the lack of fear in her posture. He looked confused. You changed. I adapted, she corrected. What do you want? I sent the key back. I don't have anything of yours. I was attacked, he said. Her hand tightened on the counter. Hunters? He nodded. A delivery man. Wood bullets. I told you about the service elevator, she said automatically. I told you the encryption on the keycard panel was weak. I know, he whispered. He walked closer until he was just on the other side of the counter. I know, Jessica. I know everything now. I know the blood wasn't spoiled. You were just managing the supply. I know the meetings weren't boring. You were keeping peace. I know I wasn't suffocating. He reached out a hand, as if to touch hers, but stopped short. I was breathing because of you. And now, I can't breathe. She looked at his hand. Pale, perfect, deadly. A month ago, she would have melted. She would have leapt over the counter and held him. She would have fixed him. But she wasn't that girl anymore. That girl died the night she left a Tupperware of steak in a hallway. She picked up a rag and started wiping a spot on the counter that was already clean. Sounds like a personal problem, Dominic. You wanted space. You have it. Jessica, please, he said, and the desperation in his voice was real. The hunters know I'm vulnerable. They know you're gone. They might come for you to get to me. She laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. She reached under the counter and pulled out the sawed-off shotgun she'd bought from a biker named Tiny. She slammed it onto the Formica top. Let them come, she said, looking him dead in the eye. I'm not the damsel anymore, Dominic, and I'm certainly not your waitress. Dominic stared at the gun, then at her. The drama wasn't over. It was just beginning. The shotgun sat on the counter between them like a lead paperweight, heavy with implication. Dominic looked at it, then up at Jessica, his brow furrowed in a way that used to make her rush to get him an aspirin. Now, she just waited for him to speak. Jessica, he started, his voice low and urgent. Put that away. You don't know how to use it. Safety is off, she said flatly. I learned. While you were sipping wine with Lydia and complaining about my existence, I was learning how to load buckshot. This isn't a game. Dominic stepped closer, his aura flaring, a wave of supernatural pressure meant to cow humans into submission. It washed over her, cold and heavy. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. I know it's not a game, Dominic. That's why I'm armed. Now get out. Before he could answer, the neon sign in the front window, a buzzing pink anchor, exploded. Crash! Shards of glass and neon tubing sprayed across the booths. Cale spun around, drawing his weapon, but he was too slow. A canister hissed through the broken window, skidding across the checkered floor. Gas! Cale shouted, covering his face. Not gas! Jessica yelled, vaulting over the counter. Verbena smoke! Thick, purple-tinged smoke began to fill the room. To a human, it was just an irritant. To a vampire, it was like inhaling liquid fire. Dominic coughed, falling to one knee, his skin blistering instantly where the smoke touched it. Get to the back, she screamed. 3 men in tactical gear kicked the front door open. They wore gas masks and carried crossbows loaded with ashwood bolts. The order. They hadn't just followed Dominic. They had tracked him to trap him. Target sighted, one of them shouted, aiming a crossbow at Dominic's kneeling form. Dominic snarled, trying to rise, but the verbena was weakening him fast. He was a king brought low by a plant. Boom! Jessica's shotgun roared. She didn't aim for the men. She wasn't a killer. She aimed for the ceiling fixture above their heads. The heavy industrial fan and light assembly tore loose, crashing down onto the lead hunter. He went down in a tangle of wires and sparks. What the? The second hunter shouted, swinging his aim toward her. Move, Dominic! She yelled, grabbing a bottle of high-proof whiskey from the shelf behind the counter. She hurled it at the hunters. It shattered against the wall behind them. She pumped the shotgun. Click-clack. She fired again, this time at the sparking wires where the fan had fallen. The spark hit the alcohol fumes. Whoosh! A wall of fire erupted between them and the door, cutting off their line of sight. The fire suppression system wasn't kicking in. She had disabled it 2 days ago because it kept dripping on the grill. Kitchen! Now! She commanded. She grabbed Dominic by the back of his expensive Italian suit and hauled him upright. Cale was already moving, his eyes watering, firing blind shots into the smoke. We tumbled into the kitchen. She slammed the heavy steel door and locked it. They're outside, too, Dominic gasped, leaning against the prep table. His face was red and raw from the smoke. The alley. They'll be waiting. I know, Jessica said. She moved to the back exit. That's why we're not going out the door. Then we're trapped, Cale said grimly. No, she said. We're in my kitchen. She pointed to the floor near the walk-in freezer. Help me move this mat. Dominic looked at her, confused. Jessica, move the damn mat. Dominic! He and Cale shoved the heavy rubber mat aside. Beneath it was a grate leading to the grease trap and the old basement storm drains. It was filthy. It smelled of rot and old fry oil. You want us to go in there? Dominic looked horrified. This was a man who didn't wear the same silk shirt twice. The order covers the exits, Jessica said, popping the grate with the butt of her shotgun. They don't cover the sewers. You want to die like a king or live like a rat. Your choice. She heard the hunters battering against the steel kitchen door. Thud. Thud. Ladies first, she said, gesturing to the dark hole. Dominic looked at the hole, then at her. For a split second, Jessica saw a flash of something new in his eyes. Respect. He dropped into the hole. Cale followed. Jessica tossed the shotgun down to Cale, grabbed her backpack from the locker, and jumped in after them, sliding the grate back into place just as the kitchen door burst open. They waded through muck that came up to their knees. The smell was indescribable. Dominic was gagging. Jessica pulled a flashlight from her pocket, one of the heavy mag lights she used to walk home. Keep moving, she whispered. The outlet is 3 blocks east, near the old shipyard. My car is parked there. You have a car? Dominic asked, wiping sludge from his cheek. I bought a 2008 Honda Civic for $2,000, she said. It's ugly, but it runs, and unlike your Bentley, It doesn't have a GPS tracker. They walked in silence for 20 minutes. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the cold damp of the tunnels. "How did you know?" Dominic asked quietly. His voice echoed off the concrete walls. "How did you know about the verbena? The trapdoor? The tactics?" "I didn't know they were coming tonight," Jessica said, keeping her light trained forward. "But I knew they would come eventually. When I was with you, I spent my nights reading your archives, Dominic. I read the history of the Order. I read their strategies. I memorized the escape routes of every building we entered." He stopped walking. The water rushed around his legs. "You did?" "Yes," she said, turning to face him. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, illuminating his ruined suit and his stunned face. "While you were telling Lydia I was clinging and hovering, I was memorizing blueprints so that if this exact moment ever happened, you wouldn't die." He stood there, stunned, ankle-deep in sewage, looking at her as if he was seeing her for the very first time. "I called it suffocation," he whispered, the realization crashing into him. "Yeah," she said, turning back around. "You did. Now come on. We have to get to the car before they realize we aren't in the diner." Her Honda Civic smelled like wet dog and stale French fries, but to Dominic Vane, it must have looked like a chariot of the gods. They drove south, away from Tacoma, away from Seattle, toward a small motel in Olympia called The Pines. It was the kind of place where you paid cash and the clerk didn't look up from his TV. Inside the room, the fluorescent lights buzzed. The carpet was a questionable shade of brown. Cale stood guard by the window, peeking through the blinds. Dominic sat on the edge of the sagging bed, stripping off his ruined jacket. His healing factor was kicking in. The blisters from the verbena were fading, leaving behind pale, smooth skin. But he looked exhausted, defeated. Jessica stood by the bathroom door, washing the sewer grime off her hands with a bar of tiny, wax-wrapped soap. "Jessica," Dominic said. She didn't turn. "There's a first aid kit under the sink if you need it." "Jessica, look at me." She turned off the tap. She dried her hands on a thin towel. She walked out and stood in front of him. She didn't sit. She wanted the height advantage. "What?" He looked up. His eyes, usually so arrogant and self-assured, were wide and vulnerable. "You saved my life." "I did. I don't know what to say." "Try thank you," she suggested. "Thank you," he said immediately. "But that's not enough. Jessica, He took a breath, struggling with the words. "I have been a fool. An absolute, blind fool." He stood up, reaching for her hands. She let him take them, but she kept her fingers limp. His hands were cold, but they trembled slightly. "I told Lydia you were suffocating me," he confessed. "I told her I needed space. I thought your care was a cage. I thought your attention was weakness." "I heard you," Jessica said softly. "I was outside the door, Dominic. I heard every word." He flinched as if she'd slapped him. "God, Jessica, I'm so sorry. Tonight showed me the truth. You weren't a cage. You were the walls. You were the roof. You were the foundation keeping the whole damn building from collapsing, and I took a sledgehammer to it." He squeezed her hands. "Please, come back. Come back to the tower. I'll fire Lydia. I'll double the security. I'll make you a queen in truth, not just in secret. I can't do this without you. I don't want to do this without you." It was a beautiful speech. It was the speech every girl in a romance novel waits for. The king, on his knees, begging. But she wasn't in a romance novel. She was in a motel room in Olympia, smelling of sewer water, with a shotgun in her bag. She pulled her hands away. Dominic looked stricken. "Jessica?" "No," she said. The silence in the room was deafening. Cale turned from the window to watch. "No?" Dominic whispered. "You don't love me anymore?" "I love you," she said, and tears finally pricked her eyes. "That's the stupid part, Dominic. I still love you. My heart is pounding right now, just being near you. But I love myself more." She took a step back. "You want me back, because you realized you need me. You realized I'm useful. You realized I kept your life running smoothly. You miss the convenience, Dominic. You miss the safety." "That's not..." It is, she snapped. You didn't come looking for me because you missed my laugh. You came because the flowers died and the blood spoiled and someone tried to kill you. You want your manager back. Dominic opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at the floor. He couldn't deny it. Not entirely. I am not a waitress anymore, she said, her voice shaking but strong. And I am not a servant. If I come back, it won't be as the girl who hides in the kitchen when your vampire friends come over. It won't be as the girl who isn't allowed to have an opinion on council matters. She walked over to the nightstand and picked up the car keys. I'm going to go get us food, real food, not blood. Jessica, Dominic said, stepping forward again, tell me what you want. Anything. She turned to the door. I want a seat at the table, Dominic. The council table. I want Lydia gone. Not just fired, banished from Seattle. And I want you to court me. I'm not moving back into the tower. I'm keeping my apartment in Tacoma. I'm keeping my job at the diner. Well, until it's rebuilt. You want me? You drive to me. You make the effort. You fit into my world for a change. Dominic stared at her. The demands were outrageous. A human on the Vampire Council? A king commuting to Tacoma? It was unheard of. He looked at her, the fierce set of her jaw, the soot on her cheek, the fire in her eyes. He realized then that he wasn't looking at a pet. He was looking at an equal. And for the first time in centuries, he didn't feel bored. He felt terrified and exhilarated. He nodded slowly. Done, he said. Lydia is gone. The seat is yours. I will drive to Tacoma every night if I have to. We'll see, she said. She opened the door. The rain was pouring down outside. Don't get comfortable, Your Majesty. You have a lot of work to do. She stepped out into the rain, leaving the King of Seattle sitting on a cheap motel bed, realizing that for the first time in his immortal life, he wasn't the one in charge. The banishment of Lydia was quiet, brutal, and public. It happened 3 days after the siege at the Anchor. They were back in the tower. The glass had been replaced, the carpets cleaned of blood. The council had gathered, 6 ancient vampires who controlled the West Coast. They sat around the mahogany table, looking bored and dangerous. Jessica walked in. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform. She wasn't wearing the soft floral dresses Dominic used to buy her. She was wearing a sharp, tailored black blazer and trousers. She took the seat to the right of Dominic's throne, the seat Lydia used to occupy. Lydia stood at the other end of the room, her face a mask of shock. Dominic, she smiled nervously. Surely you're joking? You're letting the humans sit at the high table? The one you said was suffocating you. Dominic didn't smile. He didn't even look at her. He looked at Jessica. He looked at her hands, resting calmly on the table, next to a dossier she had prepared regarding the new hunter tactics. I was wrong, Lydia, Dominic said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I didn't need space. I needed perspective. And you provided neither. He flicked his hand. Cale stepped forward, holding a one-way ticket to flight to Johannesburg. You have been reassigned, Dominic said cold, to the South African territories. You leave tonight. South Africa, Lydia screeched. But the sun, the heat, it's a backwater. It's plenty of space, Jessica said, speaking for the first time. She met her glare with a cool, level gaze. You like space, right? You'll have thousands of miles of it. Lydia was escorted out, screaming. The room fell silent. The other council members looked at Jessica with new eyes. They didn't see a pet anymore. They saw the woman who had burned a hunter alive and dragged their king through a sewer to safety. She opened her dossier. Now, she said, regarding the security protocols for the northern port. 6 months later. Life didn't go back to normal. Normal was dead. We built something better. Jessica kept her apartment in Tacoma. She didn't quit her job. Not entirely. She bought the Anchor with the insurance money and the consulting fee the council now paid her. She was the owner now, not the waitress. She hired a new staff, but on Tuesday nights she still poured coffee because she liked staying grounded. And every Tuesday night, at 10 p.m., A sleek black Aston Martin pulled into the gravel lot. Dominic Vane, the ancient, terrifying vampire king of Seattle, commuted. He drove 40 minutes in the rain. He sat in traffic on I-5. He listened to podcasts she recommended. He did it because those were the terms. One rainy Tuesday in November, the diner was bustling. Dominic sat in his usual booth in the back. He didn't have his phone out. He wasn't working. He was just watching her. She walked over with the coffee pot. "Refill?" she asked. He smiled. It was a real smile now, one that reached his eyes. "Please." She poured the coffee. "You look tired," she noted. "Council meeting run long?" "Marcus is an idiot," Dominic sighed. "He wanted to expand into Portland. I told him we don't have the manpower." "We do if you utilize the Ghoul network for surveillance instead of active patrol," she said, tearing a check from her pad and placing it on the table. He picked up the check. He looked at it, then at her. "You're right. As always." He reached into his jacket pocket. "I got something for you." She braced herself for jewelry. Or a car key. He pulled out a small, battered Tupperware container. "I made it," he said proudly. "Well, I tried. It's lasagna. I watched a YouTube tutorial. I know you've been working double shifts and haven't had time to cook." She stared at the container. The pasta looked a little burnt on the edges. The sauce was uneven. For a man who could buy Italy, it was pathetic. It was the most romantic thing she had ever seen. "You cooked?" she asked. "I didn't want you to be hungry," he said, echoing the words she had said to him the night she left. "And I wanted to show you that I can be the one who cares for the details." She sat down in the booth opposite him. She reached across the table and took his hand. "You're doing okay, Vane," she said softly. "Am I?" He squeezed her fingers. "Do you need more space? I can go back to Seattle tonight if—" "Shut up," she laughed. "You're suffocating me with your insecurity." But she was smiling, and he was smiling. He had complained that she was a heavy coat in the summer, but winter had come to Seattle. The nights were cold and long, and Dominic had finally realized that when the world is freezing, a heavy coat isn't a burden. It's the only thing that keeps you alive. He didn't want the silence anymore. He wanted the noise, the mess, the texts, the burnt lasagna, and the drive to Tacoma. He wanted her. And this time, he was going to have to work to keep her. And that is the story of Jessica and Dominic. It's a reminder that sometimes people don't realize how heavy the crown is until the person helping them carry it walks away. Dominic thought love was a cage, only to realize that the freedom he wanted was just a lonely, empty room. He learned the hard way that space is overrated when it costs you the only person who actually has your back. Jessica didn't just teach him a lesson. She rewrote the rules of the game. She went from being the waitress he took for granted to the queen he couldn't live without, all because she had the courage to walk out that door. What about you? Have you ever felt like you were giving everything to someone who just saw it as suffocating? Or maybe, have you been the Dominic in the relationship, pushing someone away only to regret it later? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single story. If you enjoyed this twists and turns romance, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching. And remember, know your worth and don't be afraid to make them drive through traffic to get to you. Adoy 10.